I don't even know what happened tonight. This vlog started with the best of intentions. What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 2 of the vlog at Orange City Racing and Card Club, just outside of Orlando, Florida. If you missed episode 1, here's a quick recap of how that went. Well, that's about as brutal as it can go for a first session. That sucks. Hopefully you'll tune in again and either see me rebound and see that I'm not a terrible player, or you'll just you'll watch me keep punting money off. Yeah, about the best way you can start a vlog about playing poker, losing 2 buy-ins. So we're back at it again. Got a buddy from out of town who's here visiting. I meet up with him, meet up with some other friends, and try to win some money back. So let's go. As I took my seat at the table, a fairly decent-sized hand was wrapping up. There was a bet out on the river and a call from a gentleman across the table. And when he flipped his cards over, he had called very, very light. And the guys on both sides of me happened to comment about how surprised they were that he actually had something. And they went on to tell me that he had been raising with air all night, had been calling off people very light, and been dumping a bunch of chips. So I'm going to take this information and try to use it to my advantage playing against this player, and it won't take long to do so. First hand of the night, we're on the button. We look down at ace-queen suited. There are 2 limpers to me. I go ahead and raise to $12. The aforementioned player calls and the other limpers get out of the way, so we're going heads up to a flop. That flop is 4-4-4. And so the action checks through and we're going to see a turn card. The turn is an ace, so now I've made force full. He checks to me and I go ahead and bet out for $10, and he quickly calls, so we're off to see a river. That river is an inconsequential queen. It doesn't change anything, and the action checks to me once again. This time I fire out for $20. I'm trying to put out a sizing that says maybe I have a hand like king queen or king jack. I'm trying to bait him into calling with a queen or something like that. I want to give him a good price to go ahead and call that bet. After all, he apparently can't fold to anybody. And he folds. So the guy that can't find his fold button somehow finds it against me, but that's all right. It's the first pot of the night. I'm sure there's more to come. In the next hand, we're under the gun +1, looking down at Jack 10 offsuit. The under the gun player limps, and I go ahead and make a raise up to $15. I'm sizing up a little bit because I'm out of position. I probably should have sized to 20 if that's my theory, but at the time I made a bet of 15. I get 2 callers, including the maniac from before, so we're going 3 ways to a flop. That flop is 8-7 king with 2 diamonds, so I've pretty much missed everything, but I do have a backdoor flush draw. The action checks through and we're off to a turn. The turn card is the 10, so now I've picked up a gut shot straight draw as well. The action checks through to me again. I bet out for $18, and my nemesis from the hand before calls. The other player folds, so we're off to see a river. The river's a 7, so I miss. I don't get my straight, I don't get my flush. The action gets checked to me, and normally in this position I would consider putting out a big bet as a bluff to try to take the hand down, but hearing about how this guy's been calling people light all night, I don't want him calling me with bottom pair or middle pair or something like that, so I decided to go ahead and just check as well. And when we flip our cards over, he mucks his, and I'm good, so I'm taking another pot down. In the next hand of the night, we're under the gun, and we look down at King Queen of Diamonds. I go ahead and open to $15, and the guy to my immediate left makes a raise to $35. Now, I had been at the table about 25 minutes with this gentleman, and he had folded every single hand since I had sat down. Literally like he was waiting for aces, kings, or queens. He had about $400 in front of him, so he had a pretty decent sized chip stack, so he obviously knew what he was doing. And so this seemed really, really tight and definitely seemed like a premium hand. The action folds around to me, and I thought about what I should do in this situation. Part of me wanted to call and see the flop, but obviously if I flop a queen or something like that, then I'm in a lot of trouble. And if I don't flop anything at all, then I'm definitely way behind. But it really does seem too nitty to make a fold in this situation. I am trying to open up my range a little bit and play hands that I'm a little bit more uncomfortable with. But after thinking about it a lot, I decided to go ahead and let this hand go, and the guy is nice enough to show me that he did have pocket queen. So my read was right. He was on a top 3 premium, and I would have been in trouble if we had gotten some money in there and I didn't hit anything on the flop. So a little bit tight, a little bit nitty, but a decent fold nonetheless. An ill-timed bathroom break means I return to the table and have to post a dead blind, so I do, and I look down at Jack 5. There are 2 callers, so there's 3 of us going to a flop. The flop is Jack 3, 7, 2 clubs, so I flop top pair here. The maniac in seat 2 bets out for $5. I go ahead and make the call, and the player behind me folds, so we're off to a turn. That turn is another jack, giving me 3 of a kind, and now I'm very confident that I do in fact have the best hand. The maniac goes ahead and leads out for $5 again, and I decide to go ahead and put in a raise, and I make it $15. He very quickly calls my raise, and so we're off to a river. The river is a 3, and now that boats me up, and once again the maniac player leads out for $5, and clearly that's not going to be enough in this hand, so I make a raise to $25. The maniac player thinks about it for a minute, and then he goes ahead and tosses in a calling chip. I table my hand, and once again we are good against this guy, and we're scooping another pot our way. I really feel like I got the maximum out of this player, getting him to call 2 raises. I think my raise on the turn perhaps could have been a little bit more. I think my raise sizing on the river was a really good size to give him the odds that he needed to call me off light. And so this is one of those examples where I think I played the hand really well and got max value out of my opponent. We're in the button now, and we look down at King 10 offsuit. It folds around to me, and I make a raise to $12. The maniac player in the small blind calls, and the big blind calls as well, so we're off to a flop 3 ways. The flop is Jack 9-6, so I have flopped a gut shot straight draw with an overcard. The action checks to me, and I go ahead and continue on here, and I put out a bet of $18, and both players call, so we're off to see a turn. The turn is a blank, so it doesn't change anything on the board. The action checks to me, and I decide to go ahead and slow down a little bit. I don't want to inflate this pot too much, so I check behind to see a river. The river's a pretty good card. It's a queen, giving us our gut shot straight. Once again, the action checks to me, and I put a bet of $35 out. Normally when I make a bet, especially when it's a turn or river bet or a bet of significant size, I try not to make eye contact with people. I tend to stare directly at the board. I try not to make too many movements, whether I'm strong or I'm weak. I don't want to give away a live tell and have somebody pick up on that. But I could definitely sense that the maniac small blind was sizing me up. I could feel him looking at me. And so I did a little bit of Hollywooding, and I tried to look nervous, and I kind of moved my neck a little bit and readjusted my shoulders. And right after I did that, he tossed in the call. Big blind gets out of the way, we show our straight, and we're 4 for 4 against our opponent tonight. The only downside, I haven't seen a hand from this guy yet, so I have no idea what he's betting with, I have no idea what he's raising with, and I have no idea what he's calling with. But we're 4 for 4 and scooping another pot our way, getting what I feel like is close to max value. We're in middle position now. We look down at 7-8 of clubs. There's a raise from under the gun to $10. I go ahead and make the call here, as do 4 other players, so we're going to a flop 6 ways. The flop is ace queen 3 with 2 spades, so I've whiffed here. The under the gun player continues on, he bets out for 20. It's not a very large bet, and I'm getting about 5 to 1 on a call. However, the thing that concerns me is there are 4 players left to act behind me, so if I make the call here and somebody comes over the top, there's really not a whole lot I can do except probably fold. I don't think by me raising I can get all of the players that are behind me to fold. I'm just not confident enough in that move yet regarding picking my sizing. I definitely could see merits for calling here and hoping to get to a turn at a price of $20. But again, I don't want to put in 20 to get raised and have to give that up. So I go ahead and end up making the fold here. It might be a little bit tight. You can let me know in the comments what you think of that fold. A middle position player calls as well as the button, and so they're off 3 ways to see a turn. That turn is a 4. Once again, there's a bet, but it's only for $25. The player does get 1 person to fold, but he's also got a call, so it's heads up to the river. The river is a 7, and surprisingly, the action checks through. When they flip their hands, one player shows ace high, the other player shows 4-5 for a bottom pair. So perhaps I gave a little bit too much respect in this situation. I do have to remember that this is a 1-2 game full of recreational players. And so perhaps this is a situation where a raise would have been very effective to take the pot down, or at least isolate down to an opponent that I was beating. So I'll chalk this one up as to me still learning this strategy of trying to bluff and represent hands. This one gets away from us, but I'm sure there are plenty more that will come our way. Another ill-timed bathroom break has me returning to the table and posting a dead blind, and we look down at 2-3. I don't have all of the details for this hand, but what I do know is that I turned the bottom end of a straight. Me and two other players end up getting a lot of money in there, including one guy that gets his entire stack in there. And when the action is revealed after the river, it turns out that me and the larger of the two stacks both had the same hand. We both had deuce 3 and had the bottom end of the straight. The other guy had top pair. So we're chopping that three-way pot up into two. It's not as big of a win as I would have liked, but it's definitely not a loss, and play continues. We're in the button now, and we have queen 7 offsuit. There's a limper before me, and I decide to go ahead and limp here as well. Being on the button, I definitely should be making a raise here, but for whatever reason I didn't, and I just decided to go ahead and call. The small blind gets out of the way, and the big blind calls. We are off to a flop. The flop is ace, queen, jack with 2 diamonds. It checks around to the guy to my right, and he bets out for $10. I go ahead and call, as does the blind as well, and we're off to a turn 3 ways. The turn is a king of diamonds, so now I've picked up a flush draw. Once again, it checks around to the guy to my right, and he bets out for $25. I go ahead and make the call here, and the blind gets out of the way, so we're off to a river heads up. The river is a 2 of spades, so the flush doesn't get there, and the player in late position goes ahead and bets out for $40. It's a very intriguing bet. Seems very value-like. He definitely wants me to call in this situation. I look over and I ask him how much he has, and he reveals he has about $140 behind him, and then he gets very confident and lets me know that he's not going anywhere. And he tells me, if you got the flush, you got the flush, but I'm not going anywhere. This definitely could be a tactic on his part, or he could be letting me know that he is in fact not going anywhere. I'm up against something like a set or something like that. So after mulling it over a little bit, I decide this is why you don't play queen 7 to a limp on the button, and I go ahead and fold my hand. I ask him to show one just for fun, and he ends up flipping over the queen of hearts. So really makes me wonder where I stood in that hand, but alas, I'll have to get him on the next one. I'm in late position now, and I look down at ace-jack. It folds around to me, and I go ahead and raise to $15. The button gets out of the way. The small blind and the big blind both call, so we're off to a flop 3 ways. The flop is ace-6-8, so I have flopped top pair. When the action gets to me, I go ahead and lead out for $25. The small blind folds, and the big blind calls, so we're off to a turn heads up. That turn is a 4. Seems like a pretty safe card. I'm not really worried about 5-7 here. When the action gets to me, I go ahead and I bet out for $40 this time, and then the opponent goes ahead and shoves all in over the top. Oops, maybe I should have worried about 5-7. It's only about $44 more to call, and so obviously in this situation I don't think I can get away with it. So I go ahead and toss in the call, and we're off to a river. And that river card is a jack. And so I announce 2 pair, and he says 2 pair as well and flips over 8-4. I flip over my hand. He said he never saw that coming, and a pretty good sized pot gets scooped our way. I've been at the table now probably about 2.5 hours or so, and both of my buddies who were coming out to play have both showed up at the table, and we're having a really good time. Everybody at the table's having a good time. There's a lot of socializing, there's a lot of shit talking, and the White Claws start flowing. And my friend and I are buying White Claws for each other, so I do have to admit that moving forward from this point on in the vlog, the details are going to start to get a little bit fuzzy. And obviously that's not something that I aim to do when playing poker or as a content creator, but it was kind of a special occasion having 2 friends at the card room, including one from New York here visiting. And so I was just trying to loosen up and have a little fun. Let's see how it affects my ability to recap hands. As an example, something happens in a hand 2 hands later where I have king 10 of clubs. Throughout the hand, there's lots of betting by the opponent and calling by me apparently, and on the river I do in fact get there on my clubs. The opponent checks it over to me and he tells me, I'm not going to bet you, but be careful. I don't really know what the hell that means, so I decide to bet it myself, and I throw $35 out there. The other opponent's in the hand fold. It gets back to my friend on the other side of the table. He tosses in a chip for a call, and when I show him the flush, I don't think we're going to be friends anymore after this one, but another pot coming my way. It's at about this time that the maniac nemesis across the table in seat 2 left, and he was replaced by a guy that we'll call Crazy Tom. Crazy Tom arrived to the table and made a very out loud declaration that the worst player in the card room was sitting down. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of action Tom is going to bring us. It didn't take long before I had king 10 and raised pre-flop. I faced a 3-bet and I went ahead and called because I was running pretty hot and had my stack up pretty good. I flopped a pair of 10s and called a continuation bet from Crazy Tom. I turned trip 10s, and when he bet out on the turn, I went ahead and shoved on the river. He was not a happy camper. He ended up folding his hand, and I showed him my king 10. I wanted to let him know that, I actually had a good hand and I wasn't bluffing him or anything. And then Tom let me know he was very unhappy that I played king 10 to a 3-bet.
I definitely think that he probably has some merit there. I did have position on him in the hand, but chances are I probably shouldn't be calling with King 10 to a brand new player who obviously is going to give me a lot of action. But then again, this is why you do it, implied odds. I figured if I could hit a flop or a turn against this guy, I was probably going to get paid. I got some value on the flop, and then I got a little bit of his money on the turn as well. He told me that if the flop had come out with a king and the turn had been a king, that I would have been crushed. So that right away lets me know he had ace king. Good 3-bet, Crazy Tom, but white claws are flowing. I'm not going anywhere. Just to show you how crazy some of the action was, I actually snuck a little bit of footage of this big 5-way pot with 3 players all in. My buddy ended up having a pair. Crazy Tom has 2 pair, and the 3 guys that are all in don't have anything that's even worth showing. Between those 6 cards, only one of them gets flipped over. So as you can see, there's about $600 or $700 in this pot. I'm not really sure what was happening, but there's a lot of action out there to be gotten, and so I want to get it. After that hand with Tom, I've got about $970 in front of me, and I can say that this is the most I've ever had in front of me at a 1-2 or a 1-3 game. I'm feeling very confident. I've been playing for about 3.5 hours or so. My friends are there. We're having a good time. But unfortunately, I kind of just went card dead for about the last 90 minutes in the night. I couldn't really seem to get anything going, so the vlog's really going to slow down here. Allow me to show you. We're in late position. We look down at ace-king offsuit. There's a raise from under the gun to $15, and there's 2 callers, and I go ahead and raise to $75. Looking back now that I haven't had any drinks, I realize I probably should have sized up a little bit more, and so I probably should have sized my raise up to somewhere in the $100 to $115 range, but I did make the raise to $75, and I get 2 calls, including 1 all-in, so we're off 3 ways to a flop. I don't hit anything on the flop and the action continues, so I have to get out of the way. 2 of the 3 opponents end up getting their entire stacks all in, and I was up against 9s from Crazy Tom and 10s from another opponent. So without hitting that ace or that king, and obviously with there being no flush draw on the board, that's just an example where I had a premium hand, I had decent position, I made a raise, but just couldn't get anything to come from it. We're in early position now as we look down at ace-queen offsuit. I raise to $15 and I get a call from the hijack and from the button as well, so we're off to a flop 3 ways. That flop is 3-7-8. The action checks around and we're off to a turn card. That turn card is a queen, now giving me top pair. When the action gets to me, I go ahead and bet out for $35, but both opponents fold, so it's a winner, but it's a small winner. And another example of how the cards kind of turned against me at the end of the night, we're in middle position. We look down at 10-8 offsuit. Anybody who plays poker knows that 10-8 is the nuts. I go ahead and limp in and we're off to see a flop. The flop is 6-7 blank, so I have flopped a gut shot straight draw. An early position player bets $15. I go ahead and make the call, and the button calls, so we're off to see a turn 3 ways. And that turn is a 9, giving me my gut shot, so now I've made the nut straight. It checks to me and I go ahead and bet $35. The button folds, and the other guy goes ahead and makes the call. And as the river's coming out, I guess he misunderstood something that I said. He thinks for whatever reason I made a comment about how I'll call anything that he bets on the river. Definitely not something that I have ever said or would I say at a poker table. So I'm not sure what he thinks he heard, but he's definitely priming himself to make a bet on the river. I really just kind of need to avoid hearts, and I think I'll be okay in this situation. Well, the river is an ace of hearts, putting 4 hearts out on the board now. The action gets to him and he goes ahead and shoves all in. This was pretty much a situation I was trying to avoid. Any non-heart river, and I can feel confident ripping my stack in there. I don't have a whole lot to worry about. But with 4 to a flush on the board and him thinking that I'm going to call anybody makes, I really don't think I'm in a position here where I can call. Chances are I'm probably beat by a really weak flush anyways. And so I decide to go ahead and make the fold. I show him my hand, trying to kind of clear the air between us. He shows ace-8 with the 8 of hearts. So he had a straight draw himself. I think he was calling me a little bit light, and then obviously when he hits his flush, he's jamming his stack in. So just, again, another example of a situation where the cards just didn't run out in my favor. I'm in middle position with ace-king offsuit. There's a raise from early position to $16 and 2 calls. And for whatever reason, in my drunken state, I decide $45 is a good size to raise to. With all that money, nobody's going anywhere, so we get 2 calls, including 1 all-in, and we're off to see a flop 3 ways. The flop is ace-9 jack with 2 clubs. So I've got a backdoor straight and flush draw opportunities plus an over. I go ahead and check the action over to Crazy Tom because I'm pretty sure he's going to put a bet out. But before he can do that, my buddy over in seat 1 puts a bet out and Tom puts in a raise. I go ahead and in this situation, facing a $60 bet, I go ahead and get out of the way and my buddy calls as well as another player, and so we're off to a turn. The turn and the river are both clubs, and my buddy flips over his hand and he shows the queen of clubs. So little did I know, if I had gotten my money in very loose and very recklessly, I could have gone runner on my own friend and stacked him. But again, just another situation where with a premium hand, I just really didn't hit a flop that I wanted to continue on, facing a bet and a raise. It's getting late, we're in early position, and I look down at tens. My standard raises of $12 and $15 haven't been working lately, so I change it up and raise to $8. I get 3 callers and we're off to see a flop 4 ways. The flop is deuce 5-6 rainbow, a really good flop for pocket tens. When the action gets to me, I bet out for $20 and my buddy comes over the top of me and raises to $65. A player in middle position then calls and he has about $500 behind him, so he can definitely keep up with my stack. I haven't played poker with my friend in a long time and I give him a lot of respect for this raise. I definitely could be facing a set from either one of these players, and that's what I worry about. I could be drawing very, very thin here. So I go ahead and muck my hand and get out of the way and let these 2 go at it. The turn is a blank. I think it was the king of diamonds. My buddy puts out another bet and we have a call, and so they're off to a river, and that river is a 4. When the hands end up being flipped up, my buddy has 2 pair, but one of the other opponents has the bottom end of a straight. It was at that moment that I realized that my reads about the situation were way off, and I was actually playing hands really poorly. Between the ill-sized bet with ace-king and now this misreading with tens, I realized that I probably have no more business at the card table. And so I decided to go ahead and cash out for one of my biggest victories at Orange City.
I don't even know what happened tonight. This vlog started with the best of intentions. I ran incredible for the first bit of it. My buddy Porter showed up and I ran even better. Then Chad showed up and I ran even better after that. And then after scooping a monster, I kind of went card dead. I didn't have a whole lot to work with. I mean, I had a couple hands. I had some ace kings that, you know, I'm 3-betting pre-flop to $50 and $60 and $70. And I'm getting called and I just can't hit a flop. I can't turn anything. You know, I'm watching these hands to run out. It's not like I folded winners. There was one hand with the ace king where I had the ace of clubs where I could have caught up had I known I was going to go runner clubs and could have stacked my buddy. But it was a weird night. I had my stack near $1,000 at one point. And then just when you go card dead for 90 minutes, there's not a whole lot you can do about that. I stuck around, I tried, but it just wasn't working out for me. So definitely better than vlog number 1. I'll tell you that. I have a little bit more confidence posting this one. We were into the game for $200. We were out for $807. So that's a profit of $607 and puts me up now after 2 episodes of this vlog. So definitely a big turnaround from episode 1. So if you're enjoying the content, if you're enjoying the hand analysis and the explanations, go ahead and drop a like and a subscribe. Apparently that somehow helps in this whole thing. But I will get back and we will roll with episode number 3 of the vlog. Until then, we'll see you.